Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to give you the second to last focus on strategy with Professor Paul. Today I'm talking about more than a quick strategy. I'm talking about something that can integrate different subjects such as our story and language arts. Many of you probably know about it. In fact, I think there might be a presentation today on it. It's called found poetry, blackout poetry, or for those of you who work for the government, redactive poetry. It's when you take a text and you selectively choose keywords to derive another type of meaning or emphasize the meaning or create counter meaning to what you're reading. It's very, very effective, but I will tell you that it's really, really important to teach the content first. So we don't want kids with a Sharpie just going holus bolus over a page, blacking out all the words that they don't want and then selecting or boxing the words that they do want. This can be quite an effective way of teaching, but again, teach the content first and then let the kids pare it down. So I thought I should do some for you. So what I did is I took 3 pieces of text. I took a section of the Indian Act created in the 1800s and revised. It was revised this year. I took a poem by Duncan Campbell Scott, who was the Minister of Indian Affairs in the early 20th century. He was also a very well-known Confederate poet. The name of the poem is The Forsaken. And then I took a current Indigenous poet named Douglas Walborough, and the poem is called Ella Joseph Campbell. So what you get the kids to do once you teach the content, because you're not just going to give somebody the Indian Act and say, hey, tear it up, although that might be tempting for some. What you do is you first get all the pages together, and I'm going to put on my pink glasses and do that. Okay, it's hard to know where the Indian Act begins and starts. All right, so I took a piece of the Indian Act, and by the way, the Indigenous poet is Douglas Walborough. I couldn't read my own writing. So the section of the Indian Act that I took first, it has to do with possession of lands and reserves. And again, all of this draft work is done by the students, and then it can be created into its own text with words standing alone. So I'm going to show it to the camera. It's a bit messy, but just listen to the words. No Indian, valid and subsisting location ticket issued under the Indian Act, 1880. The minister may, in his discretion, Indians, continued, respect, ceasing, lands or monies held by Her Majesty, desirable. Date modified, 2019, 1101. The poem continues with sections from The Forsaken by D.C. Scott. The Forsaken. Chippewa woman, sick baby, crouched in the last hours of a great storm. Fished with the bare hook all through the wild day, nothing. Valiant, unshaken, she took of her own flesh. On the 3rd in the morning saw the strong bulk of the fort by the river. Years and years after, folded her hands, sinews and corded with veins, gazed at the sky past the tops of the cedars. They covered her close with a beautiful crystal shroud. All light was gathered up by the hand of God. She had rest. Duncan Campbell Scott. From Ella Josephine Campbell, sinew, spruce roots, little more than the child inside her. No surviving without some acceptance. Heading to the palace, all tobacco smoke and last week's gossip. Warms the blood for the walk home. Woman most at home, without ceilings, without walls. Douglas Walborough. Again, it's very effective when you see all of the redactive actions and then you see what emerges from that. But as I said before, you really need to teach the content so the students know full context and content, and then let them have a go at it and create their own texts based on their understanding and, of course, their own writer's craft. Hope to see a lot of you next Friday, a day at the museum. Bye.